Christmas Eve, a night of joy, laughter, and magic. But in one neighborhood, something sinister lurks beneath the cheer. He comes uninvited, leaving behind no presents, only fear. A family came together in the living room to celebrate their holiday traditions. Stockings were carefully hung, cookies were placed out, and the youngest child penned a note for Santa. It was a night like any other Christmas Eve. A family celebrated together, their home brimming with warmth and love. But this year they weren't alone. A shadow crept closer, drawn to the lights, the laughter, and the stockings. Christmas is a time of giving. But what happens when the visitor at your door isn't here to give, but to take? As the hours ticked by, the neighborhood fell quiet, but in the shadows, something stirred. The youngest child woke to the sound of faint jingling. She crept to the window and spotted a figure near the tree in the living room. She thought it was Santa, but the figure moved too stiffly, its silhouette too sharp, and when she looked closer, she saw its eyes, hollow and dark. The girl tiptoed closer, her heart pounding. She hid behind the corner of the hallway, watching the figure rummage through their stockings. The shadow wasn't leaving gifts. It was taking something: ornaments, stockings, even the cookies left for Santa. Should she run? Should she scream? She didn't know what this creature was or what it wanted. The youngest child hurried back to her room and woke her older sibling. Together they peeked down from the staircase, only to see the shadow standing completely still, staring at the fireplace. She wasn't imagining it. The figure was there, and it wasn't leaving. But why? The siblings knew they had to act before it noticed them. The siblings crept downstairs, armed with a flashlight and their dad's old baseball bat. Bravery replaced fear as the siblings hatched a plan. They would scare the intruder away, but nothing prepared them for what happened next. It wasn't human. It wasn't Santa. It was something else entirely. The siblings dropped the flashlight and bolted back upstairs. The shadow moved unnaturally, its limbs stretching as it pursued them. They barricaded themselves in their parents' bedroom, frantically trying to call for help on a phone that wouldn't work. Outside, the sound of jingling bells grew louder. The line between reality and nightmare blurred as the shadow prowled outside their door. It didn't want gifts or decorations. It wanted them. Their parents arrived to an empty living room. The tree was intact, the stockings untouched, but their children were nowhere to be found. The children told their story, but their parents didn't believe them until they saw the ornament on the tree. It wasn't theirs. That night, the family heard footsteps on the roof and a deep, echoing laugh. The black ornament glowed faintly. The shadow wasn't finished. It had left its mark, a reminder that it would return next Christmas. Have you checked your stockings this Christmas? The holidays bring a sense of magic to the world, a warmth in the cold. But not all Christmas nights are filled with cheer. Sometimes the season hides something darker beneath the snow. She was driving home, her thoughts on family and holiday traditions. But ahead, the night held a warning she could never forget. The car's tires crunched over the snow as the driver navigated the winding road. Inside the car, a thermos of hot cocoa sat in the cup holder, and a gift bag was tucked in the passenger seat. She was on her way to spend Christmas Eve with loved ones. The roads were slick, the air bitterly cold, but her heart was warm with anticipation. She noticed a sign on the roadside, old, wooden, and barely readable. Warning, wildlife crossing. She chuckled softly and brushed it off. A sign she barely noticed. A warning she would soon wish she'd heeded. The snow began to fall more heavily, and the car's headlights cut through the thickening flurry. She turned on the high beams and gripped the steering wheel tighter. The quiet of the forest began to press in, the stillness of the snow feeling less peaceful and more watchful. Her car approached a narrow bridge, the snow-covered pines closing in around her. The forest seemed endless. In the stillness of winter, not everything that watches is alive, and not every warning can be ignored. It appeared out of nowhere, a majestic reindeer, larger than any she'd ever seen, standing motionless in the middle of the road. She slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop just feet away from the animal. Its eyes caught the light, glowing faintly, almost unnaturally. She expected it to bolt into the woods, but it didn't move. It just stood there, staring at her with eyes that seemed to hold a message. The driver honks the horn. The reindeer doesn't flinch. It lowers its head slightly, as if pointing its massive antlers toward the forest. It was as if the animal wanted her to follow, to see something beyond the trees. But why? And what was waiting for her in the dark? She hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. But curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, pulled her forward. She stepped out of the car. Against her better judgment, she followed. The reindeer turned and walked into the woods, its hooves making no sound on the snow. It led her deeper into the woods, where the air felt colder, heavier, and the sense of being watched grew stronger. She stumbled into an old clearing. In the center stood a cabin, dark and abandoned, its roof sagging beneath the weight of the snow. The reindeer stopped at the edge of the clearing, its gaze fixed on the cabin. She felt drawn to it, though every fiber of her being told her to turn back. She approached the cabin, her breath visible in the icy air. The windows were frosted over, but faintly she caught a flicker of movement inside. The cabin looked lifeless, yet something stirred within. She reached for the door, the wood splintering under her touch. Inside, the air was stale, carrying the scent of decay. Dust-covered furniture sat untouched, while the fireplace glowed faintly with embers. It felt like stepping into a memory, a place frozen in time. But whose memory? And why had the reindeer brought her here? On the mantel she discovered an old photograph, a family gathered around the fireplace, their faces strikingly familiar. Her blood ran cold. She recognized the faces. They were her own family, but from decades ago, long before she was born. The reindeer appeared in the doorway, its antlers grazing the frame. Its eyes seemed to plead with her, urging her to leave. The reindeer was no longer a guide, it was a warning. This place wasn't meant for her, and something within it was waking up. A sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut. The lights flickered, and the shadows in the room grew longer and darker. She realized too late that she had stepped into a trap, a place where the past and the present collided. The ghosts of the past were awake, drawn by her presence. They wanted something from her, and they wouldn't let her leave. She remembered the photograph on the mantel and realized the truth. The cabin had belonged to her ancestors, and their mistakes had cursed the family for generations. The sins of the past had chained her to this place, and only by acknowledging them could she break free. She stepped forward, facing the ghostly figures. Her voice, though shaking, was resolute as she spoke words of forgiveness and understanding. The ghosts faded, their hold on the living broken. The reindeer had been her guide, leading her to confront the past and find peace. As she returned to her car, the forest felt lighter, the air warmer. The reindeer watched from the trees, its mission complete. Sometimes the past finds a way to speak to us, and sometimes we need to listen. If you're enjoying these stories so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Your support motivates us to keep creating even more great content. Now back to our final story. In the heart of a remote village surrounded by ancient woods, a chilling tale had been passed down for generations. The legend spoke of a witch who rose every 100 years on the winter solstice, a spectre bound by vengeance, cold as the frost she commanded. For the villagers, this year wasn't just another celebration, it was the centennial. The villagers clung to their traditions, celebrating the return of the sun with bonfires and song. But not everyone was at ease. The elders had reminded them of the witch, a warning passed down through time. The witch of winter solstice appeared when pride, greed, or broken promises tainted their community. The elder spoke gravely, retelling the tale as flames danced in his hollow eyes. He warned that the witch preyed on those who had forgotten respect for the old ways. If angered, she could bring eternal frost to the land. The children listened, rapt with fear, but many adults dismissed the story as superstition. Not everyone dismissed the tale. One family in particular felt the weight of the warnings. They had heard rumors of strange sights in the woods, livestock disappearing, and the biting cold of this winter, harsher than any before. The mother, her face tense, wondered aloud if the legends were more than just stories. Her children, uneasy but trying to stay brave, said nothing. In the woods, the eldest son found something he couldn't explain. A set of clawed footprints led deep into the trees. Curiosity overcame caution, and he followed them. What he saw sent a chill down his spine. A figure of straw hung from a frost-covered tree, a warning, though its meaning was unclear. He hurried home, but the image haunted him. That evening, the storm grew fierce. The howling wind sounded almost alive, shaking the very foundations of the village. But the true terror lay beyond the snow. The youngest daughter woke to find frost spreading across her window pane, forming an eerie, ghostly face. She screamed, but by the time her family arrived, the frost was gone. Morning brought no peace. Homes lay abandoned, their occupants vanished. Thick layers of frost coated their walls and windows, and an unnatural silence hung over the village. The elder's voice trembled as he confirmed what many feared. The witch of winter solstice had returned. The villagers, stricken with terror, begged for a solution, but the elder could only remind them of the old ways. Honor and sacrifice might appease her wrath. Fear turned to blame as the villagers turned on one another, desperate to find a scapegoat. Some argued to flee the village, while others insisted on making an offering. The family who had seen the frost face became the target of suspicion. Whispers of their bad luck spread like wildfire. That night the family heard scratching at their door. They huddled together as the sound grew louder. Through the frosted window they caught sight of her. The witch of winter solstice, cloaked in frost and shadow. Her presence froze everything in her path. The eldest son, clutching to fragments of hope, remembered the effigy he'd seen. He believed it held the key to ending her curse. Ignoring his family's pleas, he ran into the storm to face the witch. At the frost-covered tree she awaited him. Her voice, cold and hollow, revealed the truth. The villagers' ancestors had betrayed her, stealing her land and breaking their promise to honor the winter solstice. The sun offered himself as atonement. His words, filled with sincerity, struck a chord in the witch. She demanded the effigy be burned as a sign of their repentance. With the effigy destroyed, her icy form began to dissolve, but her final words lingered in the air. "Honor the old ways, or I will return." The curse was lifted and the village began to heal, but the witch's warning was not forgotten. Each winter solstice, they now placed an effigy in the square, not out of fear, but out of respect for the balance they had once broken. If you loved this episode, be sure to check out our other videos. Thank you for watching. See you in our next video.